Hello everybody, welcome back to another tutorial of AstroPics Lab. Today we are going to talk a little bit about the AstroPics Lab version 2.0 beta, which is the new one that we are going to release. As you can see, there is an important change on the user interface. Usually the menu was up there here at the top of the window, and now we moved this to the right, so you can find all the different tools and functionalities that you have here in a tree structure, so you can see everything at the same time and take a look at the different options that you have. And we have just added some cool features that we are gonna explain and show you right now. Let's start with loading an image. As you can see, we added here some information about the image, bubble.jpg, and here the dimension and explaining which is a JPG, and also you can move and see the X, Y, and RGB numbers. Sorry. You can see here the usual buttons that we already had, so the zoom, but you can use the mouse wheel to zoom, so it's better to not having to go here. And also here we have the button to change the view once you separate the object from the stars. When you separate the objects from the stars, you get two layers, and you can change the view and change from one layer to another just clicking here. We are going to explain it right now, okay? First of all, we loaded a JPEG file. So it's a non-linear image. So as this is a non-linear image, you can see that these linear tools are not are in gray. So you don't need to use them because you already have a linear image. So we assume that you have been stacking an image, you have stretched the image, and you have a JPEG, you have a GIF, you have a TIFF, you have a BMP. So you have a non-linear image. So you have all these functions for an image coming from, I don't know, SCR Plus or PixInsight or Serial, whatever application that you are using. If you have a non-linear image, so you have been stretched the image, you can work with all these functionalities here. But also we added these functionalities here that we are going to explain in another tutorial, which are specifically tools for linear images. So if you load fits image, for example, you can also work with this fit image. You can do a color calibration, you can do a gradient removal, a background extraction, and then finally a stretch the fits image and get a non-linear image, and then you can apply all these functionalities. So there are two ways of work with AstroPics Labs, with the fits or linear images. You can work with them, but you can also start working with a non-linear image, a JPEG, a BMP, a TIFF, a GIF, all these kind of files that you can work from an image which is already stacked and stretched. This is the example of this bubble.jpg image, which is an image that it's already stacked and also it's stretched. So this is the starting point that you can work with in AstroPics Lab. Okay, so as you know, for past tutorials, I think that the best way to start with any kind of image is separate the stars and objects. Okay, so if we run this, you can see that now we are loading the AI model. Okay, it's gonna take a little bit, and then it's gonna start working. Okay, so I think that this option is clearly what it's doing. As you know, this is gonna create two different layers. Okay, so it has finished it, and you have this layer, which is the same image but without the stars, and then the rest here. You can see that usually when you separate the object and the stars, you have some rest here. It's not a problem because the final composition adds everything. Okay, so you can work with that. There is no problem. But we added this adjust star layer in order to get you work specifically with this star layer. Okay, so this has changed a little bit. We have a lot of options here, and we have some presets. For example, to work as specifically with the stars, once you have separated it, you can just use a natural preset, a subtle preset, which is creates a very subtle transformation on the stars. You can work with crisp, colorful, dreamlike. So you can work with all. Okay, but maybe um, here the best idea is to just go with, or I recommend to, you can play with that. Okay, so you can undo, you can redo undo and play with everything. You have a preview here, so you can check wherever you want. But I think that with my experience, what it works fine is this star size. If you just move this star size to -1, for example, and you do a preview, you have a version with uh, a stars a reduction size of the stars. So in mostly of the cases, you reduce enough the stars to get a better image. So it's up to you. Okay, so you can play with that, but I recommend a star size, maybe to go with a little bit of background darken. You can try, okay, increment or decrease the brightness, star saturation, opacity of the star layer. You can play with that, okay. So that's something that you can do, and well, you can play with that, okay. But also you can reset everything and start again. So you can play with this screen. What I recommend, I usually recommend to do a -1 on a star size, which is looking fine, and then maybe go in a little bit deeper, apply a zoom, and try to take a look at some stars. For example, this star, maybe it's a little bit weird, and you don't want this kind of stars. You can then go for the brush. You can enable a brush and just remove this star. Okay, so you can see that with the brush, you can remove the stars that maybe are not too good for you. Maybe this one, we can remove this, maybe this one. Okay, so we can remove the wall stars. You can apply transformation on the wall stars layer, but then you can also go and remove this one. For example, this, I don't like it because maybe it's creating here. I want to clean everything on this because I prefer to have the nebula without any kind of stars, which I think that looks better. Okay. Okay. For example, and let's apply this. Okay. So here is the first transformation. We have splitted the object and the stars, and we have decreased the size of the stars to get a better nebula image. Okay, as you know, you can denoise. Okay, as if we take a deep look here, you can see that there is some noise here. Okay, so my suggestion is going for an AI denoise. You can just apply this, loading the model, and applying the denoise. You can see that it's very quick, and apply. Now you can see that if we undo and redo, you can see that the noise reduction, which is an AI model, it's working quite well because it has removed all the noise. You can see that there is some grain there, and it removes everything. And also when it detects some parts which are not noise, it tries to increase a little bit. You can see here that he detected that this is not noise, this is part of the nebula, so it tries to put a little bit better. Okay, so that's good. So a good starting is separate the stars, apply AI denoise. Okay, and then once you have everything there, remember that you have here an option to save object and a star layer. So in every part of your pipeline, in every moment that you want, you can always save just the nebula layer and the stars layer. Maybe now you wanted to take these pictures to Photoshop or to another applications, you can do that. You can save the nebula layer, the stars layer, and move to Photoshop and start working with Photoshop, for example. Okay, so we give you the possibility to just get the separate layers here. Okay, the next one I always suggest to do is the other AI model, which is Enhance Object. The enhanced object is an incredible AI model. It's trained with a lot of examples and knows exactly what to do. You can see that here you have a enhanced amount. So we put everything, and you can see here with this model that all these parts, if I do an undo, you can see which now this is a nice image, right? But if you take a look at that, you can see that maybe it's a little bit blurry because it's a difficult image to get. But with this AI enhance, you can get a lot of detail. Okay, and this is because this model have seen a lot of examples of nebulas and galaxies and objects and knows exactly how to generate detail. Okay, so I think that this is very nice what this AI enhanced object is doing to the to these images. Okay. Well, this is exactly the same that we have in previous versions. Let's take a look at another features. For example, what we have: classical flip and rotate. There's nothing to explain here. You can flip and you can just rotate the image. Okay, so that's something that we still didn't have in application, so we put it here. AI super crop. The AI super crop, it's a cool feature. You can just do a crop. Okay, so if you want, you can use it as a simple crop. So you can just select an area and do a crop. But we just added new features which are very cool, which is that you can just crop from some zone of the image, but then you can upscale. So the resulting zone that you have cropped, it has the double of the resolution applying an AI model. So an upscale of the zone that you have cropped, and also an enhanced object of the cropping zone. So you can just crop, for example, if we want, we can crop this part and say, okay, I want to just crop this part, but it's going to be a very small image if I just crop this. So just upscale, so generate the double size of the cropping size, the double size without losing detail, and also enhance the object. Okay, so you can do this kind of things. But usually what you are going to do is go in here and say, okay, I just want to crop here and forget the sides which maybe have some error and just do a crop. Okay. Background extraction. This is a feature that a lot of people ask us to put in the application. So you can just clicking here, it applies by default. So you can see that it has applied it. Okay, so you can here there is a blend slider, so you can see if I put it at 0, you can see the original image. So here I can decide the amount of background extraction that I want to apply. Okay, so if I put at 100%, I see the wall. And here there is some parameters to try to configure how to do this background extraction. You can play with them. This is the grid density, the number of grids that we take into example. You can play with that. And this is the signal protection if you want to be more conservative or less conservative in this background extraction. So maybe you wanted to do a little bit more conservative and things like that. Okay, so this is option which the default value, I think that it works quite well. So I suggest you to try and to take a look at that, because if we apply, you can see that if I do an undo, here you cannot see exactly which is the background. Everything it's like a little bit colored, right? So if you apply the background extraction, you can see that now you have a background and the rest is the nebula. So I think that it's a cool feature. Okay, so we have also the gradient removal. This is I think that in this image we cannot see anything about that because this image right now doesn't have any gradient, but this is the classical gradient removal functionality. So if you have an image with a lot of gradient, maybe you have some light cities here and here not, and or the moon, the light of the moon here and things like that. So there is a gradient on your image. This is gonna minimize a little bit this gradient. Okay, so we can just apply, but in this image there is no gradient, so just try it because it's a very cool feature. And also we have the remove green noise. Everybody knows that the green noise is a huge problem on astrophotography, so this is the classical remove green noise. So you can see that here there is no green noise, but you can play a little bit and just decide the best configuration for your image. Okay, so then there is a subset of new functionalities which are tone and color. Okay, so this is a very classical functionalities, but are new to this version. You can play with the levels, classical levels, but as we have splitted the object and the stars, the first thing that it's asking you is what levels do you want to adjust, the object or the stars? Let's go for the objects. Okay, here we can see that maybe this is a little bit aggressive, this level, but you can move them, so you can play with that, and you can just decide the levels that you want to apply. This is a classical functionality. Okay, so you can do in an auto or just apply a reset if you are not feeling comfortable with that, and you can just play with these levels. Okay, so just an example, let's put it here, for example, and we have here the resulting one. And also the curves. The curves, you can also apply the curves to the object or to the stars, and as it is usually, you have you can play with the curves, create a new points of the curve, and then move them and play with that. Okay, you can apply that to both all the channels at the same time, or color by color. So if you want to go to the red and just make the red going high, you can just move that. So it's a standard curve application. Okay, and you can reset this channel just to go to restore the red color. You can move for the green, for example, but you can reset the channel. Okay, the same for the blue, and the same for the object or for the stars. And also you have here presets. Okay, you can have the typical soft S, the S curve, the lift mid-tones, compress highlights, or boost shadows. Okay, so you can or you can reset everything, reset all, and just apply I don't know, maybe something like that, which it can be a little bit cool. Okay, so let's apply. Okay, so that's curves. The HDR, it's HDR tone mapping. It's something very used in astrophotography. You can see that this is applied to object only because you have the stars layer preserved and separated. But if you doesn't have split the image and the object and the stars, it's going to be applied. Everything is going to be applied to the wall image, right? So all these options are intelligent and knows if you have splitted the object and the stars, and then do the job correctly. Okay, so you have here this HDR, which you can play with that, and it's a classical HDR. Okay, so you can also, you have here the amount of quantity of HDR that you want to apply, and also here you can move with some of these the detail boost and the tone compression. I love to go to not touch the tone compression and to go for the detail boost and just apply some or just only amplify the local contrast. Okay, so that's something that I like it. Okay, you can play with that. Okay. And after we have the object color boost, which is a feature that we already had on the previous versions. It's just a boost on brightness and saturation, and just only applying to the object. You can see that the stars keep the same, but you are applying some boost on the object. So you can play also with that. Okay. Then detail and local. Okay. We have here some functionalities that we already had in previous versions, and this one which is new, the local contrast, the Gleich, or I don't know how to pronounce this, but it's a local contrast. So you have here presets, so you can play with standard, maybe strong, micro, or Nebula ones, and it applies a local contrast. Okay, so you can also play with that, play with luminance only, with all channels. So you can play with these sliders and try to and modify the image. Okay, you can go for a more dramatic versions of the image or whatever you want. Okay. Okay, then the object selective brightness, object selective saturation, object selective detail, object selective contrast. All these four are the same and are already on the previous version. Let's take a look at the brightness, for example. This is something very cool from my point of view, because here you have a different tone mapping scheme. So what we have here is a preset of different groups of luminance. For example, in this preset, you have from 0 to 25% of luminance in this group, fine saturation. From 25% to 50% of luminance here on the low mid saturation. From 50% to 75% here, and from 75 to 100% here. So, sorry, you have here different blocks, and you can, at show mask, you can see the image that is affecting. So here, with this mask, we can see that from the 75% to 100% of the luminance of this image belongs to this part, which is the nebula. So it's very cool because you can just apply a boost of brightness just on the nebula. And it's very easy because you can apply this boost based on this mask. Okay, so you can reset and say, okay, no, I want to another combination. For example, this one. This one is very useful for me because in this one, what we are doing is here at fine resolution, there is from 0 to 70% of the luminance here. So almost all the image. But then I can go a little bit at the detail here because here we have from 70 to 95% is this parts of the nebula, but from the 95 to 98% are these parts and the most brightener parts here. So you can go and try to say, okay, these parts, maybe I want a little bit more of luminance. Okay, try to arrive at the same point as this. Maybe I can do a little bit more here, and maybe I can do a little bit more here. Okay, this is not working fine. So you need to be careful with this because otherwise it's going to create not so real. So, but you can do things like that. Okay, apply different toning mappings and then apply, in this case, more or less brightness. Okay, and exactly the same with the saturation, and exactly the same with the detail, exactly the same with the contrast. Okay, so those are options which I think that are very, very, very useful. And here, the last functionality of this detail and local is the object retouch for local adjustment. This is new for this version, and I love it a lot. What you can do with this screen is basically you can it's like it's more or it looks like a Photoshop brush or photographic brush, I guess, something like that. So you can enable a brush and then apply these adjustments on just the part that you are applying the brush. For example, you can do a little bit more of brightness. Enable the brush and say, I want this part to be more brightness, so you can just work on that. Okay. For example, let's do it a little bit more dramatic. You can see here, for example, you have the erase, so you can erase this part, or you can just add mask or erase mask. Well, this is a typical tool, okay? And hold to just see the where I created the mask. And once I have this mask applied here, I can apply, for example, more brightness. You can see that this is not good, right? This is a very awful situation, right? Because you need to be very, 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 very work very, very fine with this brush in order to do not create these strange situations. But as we know that these things happen, we just enable these feather edges. Clicking on this, you can see that on the mask, we apply a smooth on the borders of the mask to minimize these changes. So without that, you can see that this is not working fine, okay? But if we apply that, you can see that we apply a little bit of mask border, and it works quite well. And doing that, what you can do is, okay, let's do I have brightness, I'm gonna do with a little bit more of contrast, for example, and work with that, okay? So you can see that you are applying just where you have the mask applied, and well, classical, okay? So you can go for a dramatic, for example, maybe it's too much, this dramatic, maybe there is a lot of things here. You can go for enhance, for example, maybe too much here. You can reduce a little bit, you can reduce a little bit, and create something that you like. And also you can enable the brush again, and with this, click it, the edge transition is it's very smooth, so you can go and just apply it everywhere without having to worry about transitions between zones that I apply the mask and zones that I don't apply the mask. Okay, so you can do this kind of things, for example. Okay, and going for that here and apply. For example, you can see that we applied everything here. If I do an undo, you can see that from here to here, which is very easy to do with this brush. Okay, so I think that it looks very cool. Okay, this is the object retouch. And then finally, we have added some creative and finishing tools. Okay, first one, change palette. Once you have everything done, you can decide the palette that do you want to apply, the normal palette, the different palettes that we have in astrophotography. You can play with that. You can just try different and apply to both, to object only, for example, then let the stars and only to the stars. It has no sense, but you can apply to both, so you can play with that. Okay, and then another cool feature is the selective color correction, which is now that I have everything on place, I can decide and say, okay, I want a natural balance. Or, for example, there are some presets. The HOO boost, for example. Okay, I can apply the preset, and I have applied these modifications. This preset, for example, a warm nebula preset, for example, or a cool nebula preset. Okay, and you can just go for a natural balance, for example, and apply. Okay, and you can then say what you can do here. For example, I know that I have here some blue, then I can play with the saturation specifically of the blues, and then work with the hue, for example, and I can just play with that. And I prefer this kind of blue, for example, or I can go for, in this case, the reds that I have here. I can work with that and change. You can see here that change the hue, for example, maybe too much, but you can play with that, and you can play with the saturation, and you can play with all these, applying to different colors. Okay, so maybe the magentas a little bit more. There is no magentas here. Well, you can play with that. Okay, you can play with the colors, which is selective color correction. Then Nebula Bloom. This is a creative functionality for a very specific cases. What it does is to apply a glow effect here, just specifically at the nebula. So in some cases you will have, you wanted to have a very glow nebula. It's very for a specific use cases, which you want your nebula to glow. Okay, but you can play with that and see if it has sense for you to apply in some occasions. Okay. And then the start depth of field, what you are doing here, you can see that you are applying some blurry to the stars to create an effect of depth. Okay, you want to here you can see creates a sense of depth. Object in foreground starts are receding behind. Okay, so you can just wanted to apply this blur to the stars and create this effect of depth, which is can be very useful if you have bad quality stars. For example, if you want to just blur a little bit and put them on the background, you can play with that. Okay, so it's a feature that you can use. And also the 3D effect, which it was already on the previous versions. This is, we improve it a little bit. You have here stars. If you want the stars just to be on the background of the image, you can just move this. When we were moving this, the stars are disappearing from the first, I mean, you can remove them and just let some stars, for example, here or here, but not in the nebula. Okay, you need to be to take a look at that because it can create some artifacts on the start. So you need to use it. Well, thinking a little bit about if you really want to do that or not. But I think that it's a cool feature because, well, you can always apply that and then go to the adjust star layer, and these stars that are not good, you can just remove them. So you can just remove them. So it's not a huge problem here. Okay, but I don't know. It's just a aesthetical thing. So you can just put the stars on the background and works very well. So I think that it's a cool feature. Okay. Okay, 3D effect, and that's all. That's all. We've gone a little bit quick on this just to create an overview. What I want to show you is just the last thing is that if we uploaded this, for example, the same image that we have at the beginning, we create some pipelines. This auto process image, it's the same pipeline that we already have. This is a pipeline which applies remove noise in image, separate the start and object, enhance the object, auto stretch image, lighten object, and remove stars if you want. So this is a pipeline that we already have. The pipelines are very good for people that doesn't want to get rid of all these functions. There are a lot of people that they just want to improve a little bit my image. So those pipelines work quite well. And we, in this version, we added this deep sky full process, which is a little bit better than this auto process image. What it does is to separate the stars, clean stars, background extraction, gradient removal, denoise AI, enhance object, and remove green noise. You can choose whatever you want, but you can just run this. And if you run this, all the pipeline is executing for you. So I'm not saying that you always do that because it's gonna, to be honest with you, it's gonna work for some images, but for some other maybe it's not gonna work as you expect. But I think that it's a good idea to start with this and say, okay, let's see if the image it's how the image it's generated, right? So it's a good idea to start. For example, you can see it uses it was very quick, so you can try it without any problem. You can go undo and say, okay, what it has done. You can see that from this to this, it has done automatically a lot of things and generate this image, which I think it's quite better from the previous one, from the original one, sorry. So you can see that maybe just launching these pipelines, you can get good results. So if you don't have time, if you don't want to lose a lot of time processing images, you can try this. And if the results are good for you, you can go ahead with that. Keep in mind that this is not a silly process. It removes the background, it removes denoise the image, enhance the image, remove the green noise. So it's doing a lot of things that almost in every photo all the astrophotographers are doing. So it's not a silly process. So it's a very thinked process. So we think it a lot on how to do this pipeline, and I think that it can be a good idea. Okay. And that's all. Just keep in touch because the next tutorial is going to talk about the linear tools, which we need to explain also to you guys. So we are gonna talk on linear tools on the next tutorial, and also keep in touch because we are gonna generate the same tutorial but in Spanish for the people from Spain. And sorry for my English level because I know that it's not as good as I want, but let's keep in touch. Okay, so I hope you like this 2.0 beta version. It's going to be released in a few days. Thank you, everybody.